By morning, all three of us were lying side by side on the beach. This should have never happened. Chapter 1, Introduction. As the sun set, the golden waves of the ocean lapped at the shore. With my legs buried in the sand, I sipped my cold cocktail, staring off into the orange sky. The reason I was here, though, came from an unexpected offer. Yes, I'm Lara, 32 years old, and I've been married to Daniel for 2 years. It was through him that I entered this life of luxury and ease. Daniel, at 54, was a successful businessman. When we first met and got married, I knew he had a son from his first marriage. But since I married him, Mike had stopped talking to his father. Recently, however, Mike told him that he had forgiven him. That led us to this vacation at a 5-star hotel in Hawaii. Mike had brought along his best friend, Alex. When we arrived at the hotel, Daniel, exhausted from the long flight, retreated to our room, while I decided to head down to the beach. I was wearing a deep neck, thin, transparent dress that accentuated my tan. I had on a mini pair of shorts that showcased my long legs, and a bikini cover-up that hugged my body. As I walked, I couldn't help but notice the stares around me. After walking along the beach for a while, I headed to the hotel bar. I was planning to have a drink on my own, but before long, I noticed 2 young men watching me closely, men I didn't recognize. When I lifted my eyes to look more carefully, I realized one of them was Mike. We hadn't had a proper conversation yet, but his gaze wasn't the kind you'd give a stranger. Mike and Alex approached me. Mike seemed a little distant, but also curious, aware of the fact that he was now close to his father's new wife for the first time. Alex made the first move. "I think we need to get to know you better, Lara," he said with a slight smile. "We don't really know Daniel as a social guy, so you're the one who can get him off track, huh?" I rolled my eyes. "I don't think I got him off track. But everyone needs a little change, right?" I said sarcastically. Mike quietly listened to our conversation. Finally, he set his drink down and turned to me. "My dad hasn't talked much about you," he said. "But honestly, I think I understand why now." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? Why's that?" He scanned me with his eyes, but there was no rush or greed in his gaze. It was more like he was studying a puzzle, trying to figure it out. Because if he tried to talk about you, he wouldn't find the right words. I paused for a moment. Despite his playful and slightly mocking tone, there was something deeper in his words. I took a sip of my drink without replying. For now, keeping my distance seemed like the right choice. But deep down, I sensed this vacation was going to get a lot more complicated than I had expected. Chapter 2, Approaching Shadows. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, I lay on my lounge chair, watching the endless blue of the ocean. I wore a thin linen pareo and had chosen a matching bikini underneath. The soft morning breeze brushed my skin, and I wanted to savor this peaceful moment. But my solitude didn't last long. "Good morning." I lifted my head to see who was casting a shadow over me. Mike, having removed his sunglasses, stood in front of me with a cup of coffee in hand. He seemed to have just woken up, but his confidence was clear in the way he carried himself. "Good morning," I replied with a neutral expression. His eyes lingered for a moment on my chest and hips. "I guess you like waking up early?" I shrugged. "I enjoy the silence. At this hour, there's no one around, so I can relax for a few hours at least." Mike smiled slightly and settled into the lounge chair next to me. I watched his movements, but with an indifferent attitude, turned my gaze back to the ocean. He was close, but ignoring him seemed like the easiest option. "Dad's probably still asleep, right?" he asked, taking a sip of his coffee. "Probably," I replied. "Long flights wear him out." Mike nodded and looked up at the sun. The last time I saw him, he was a completely different person. Now, I don't know, Maybe time changes everything. There was weight in his words. Although I didn't want to discuss this with him, I remained silent and waited. After a while, he turned back to me. So, how about you, Lara? Was marrying my dad difficult? I turned my gaze toward him. He seemed serious, but there was a curiosity hidden beneath it. I smiled and tilted my head slightly. Whoever said life was easy? Mike chuckled lightly. Definitely not. But I have to say, I never imagined my dad would have such an impressive wife. I smiled faintly but didn't respond. At that moment, I noticed Alex waving at us from the hotel bar by the pool. Breakfast time, he called out. Are you joining us? Mike looked at me. What do you think? Why not? After breakfast, while we were in the hotel lobby making plans, Mike suddenly turned to us. Would you guys consider going to the club tonight? He asked, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. Daniel chuckled softly and shook his head. It's a bit young for me, but you two go ahead, have fun. I smiled lightly. Not a bad idea. Mike smiled back with approval. Great, then get ready for tonight. Lara, remember, tonight is all about having fun. Chapter 3, Stepping into the Night. As the night approached, I retreated to my room and began getting ready. I had chosen a black body-hugging mini dress. With its thin straps and deep back cut, it was both elegant and provocative. As the sharp but feminine scent of my perfume filled the air, I took one last look at myself in the mirror. I had left my hair in soft waves and applied dark makeup. When I finished coloring my lips with a bold red, I felt like the night had truly just begun. Mike was waiting for me at the hotel lobby bar. His eyes froze for a moment when he saw me, then a faint smile spread across his face. Ready? I nodded slightly. The club was just a few blocks away from the hotel. As we entered, the loud music and neon lights immediately transformed the atmosphere. As we got lost in the crowd, Mike's eyes never left me. In the center of the dance floor, we found ourselves in a space where, despite being surrounded by people, it felt like we were alone. When Mike returned with 2 drinks in his hands, he offered me one. Want to try it? It's a strong but sweet cocktail. I took the glass and took a sip. As the alcohol slid down my throat, I could feel Mike watching me closely. I smiled faintly and placed the glass back on the table. Not bad. As the music picked up its rhythm, people became even freer on the dance floor. Mike leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Do you want to dance?" I lifted my eyes to him and shrugged. Let's see what your skills are like. When he pulled me onto the dance floor, we got lost among the people. I began moving to the rhythm, my body sensing with the music, and I noticed Mike's hand slowly inching closer to my waist. He paused for a moment as if measuring my reaction. I didn't push him away, but I kept my distance. Dancing with you is a privilege, he said with a faint smile. I'm sure I'm not the first woman you've heard that from. Mike chuckled lightly. Maybe you are. As the night went on, we continued chatting while sipping our drinks. Mike was trying to get to know me better, and his touches were becoming more frequent. I couldn't ignore them any longer, so I decided to leave and head back to my room. Chapter 4, Choppy Waters. The next afternoon, Daniel surprised us by inviting us on a private yacht tour. We were going to spend the day surrounded by endless blue waters and luxury and splendor. When I stepped onto the yacht's spacious deck, I felt the sun hitting my skin. I was wearing a light sheer beach dress, and the black bikini underneath created a perfect contrast against my sun-kissed skin. I tossed my hair back and adjusted my sunglasses as I scanned the surroundings. Mike was watching me again, his flirtatious expression unchanged. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed to have had a few drinks already. In the sunlight, he approached me with a cheerful but slightly cocky attitude. You look great, Lara. I gave a calm smile and nodded. Thanks. As I settled into a relaxed spot on the deck and sipped my drink, Daniel sat beside me. His words were laced with innuendo. Spending time with these young folks is making me feel younger, he said, laughing lightly. Sometimes I feel like you're avoiding me. I raised my eyebrows slightly. What do you mean? Especially last night when you went out with Mike. It was like you forgot all about me. His suggestive words irritated me, but I kept my voice steady. We just wanted to have a little fun last night, that's all. When I felt Daniel's hand lightly brush against my leg, an alarm went off inside me. I quickly pulled away and shot him a sharp look. What are you trying to do? Daniel hesitated for a moment, then laughed and raised his hand. Relax, I'm just joking. My body tensed. I stood up, took off my sheer dress, and walked straight toward the edge of the yacht. I needed the cold water to wash away my discomfort. As I let myself fall into the water, the coolness helped soothe some of the unease inside me. After swimming for a while, I climbed back up to the deck. Mike approached me, a knowing expression in his eyes, one that suggested he'd picked up on the tension between Daniel and me. Is everything okay? I gathered myself and smiled. Of course. We're having a great day, aren't we? Chapter 5, Conflict. When we entered the hotel room, Daniel's attitude was getting to me. The distance between us was growing. Lara, he said, his tone soft, but the pressure in his voice only made me more tense. I just want you to be more careful. You're getting too close to Mike. I met his gaze. You've said that over and over, Daniel. Stop crossing the line. Daniel stepped toward me angrily, but I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I stormed out of the room. The air outside was cold, but the only place that could calm me down was the beach. When I reached the beach, I saw Mike and Alex walking toward me with bottles in hand. They both seemed drunk but carefree. Mike sat next to me on the sand. You've been gone, Lara. What's going on? He asked, his eyes blurry. I'm fine, I said, forcing a smile, but I felt empty inside. I quickly grabbed a drink and started sipping, feeling the alcohol work its way through me, easing the tension. Alex joined us a moment later. Let's figure this out together, he said with the kind of confidence alcohol gives you. Suddenly, Mike leaned in, resting his head on my shoulder. Lara, I've been wondering about you for a while, he said, his words slurring, but the meaning clear. My mind blurred with the alcohol, and everything around me felt chaotic. I couldn't fight it anymore. We had crossed the line. By morning, all three of us were lying side by side on the beach. This should have never happened. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story.